Let's learn how to combine like terms using the distributive property. In our previous lessons, we learned how to identify and combine like terms, terms that have the same variable and the same exponent. We also learned how to use the distributive property to simplify expressions. Now, we're just going to put those two skills together and look at some expressions that have more terms than we have been used to seeing. So, let's jump right in here. So, our first example here, we have 8 minus 8 parentheses x plus 1. So the steps that I like to do to use to solve or simplify expressions with distributive property and several terms, the first thing I want to do is find the distributive property, not even circle the distributive property. As you see, I do have distributive property here, negative 8 times x plus 1. Now, if you look inside the parentheses here, I have x plus 1. And if these were like terms, I could go ahead and combine those. But, unfortunately, they are not like terms. The first term has an x and the second term does not. So there's nothing I can do with x and 1. However, I have this 8 sitting right outside, right beside the parentheses, with nothing in between. So we know that that means that we're going to multiply, we're going to distribute. All right. So I have my distributive property right here. And one very common mistake that a lot of students make when first learning the distributive property, especially when there are other terms involved, is that we forget that this negative sign, this symbol that is right to the left of our number that's touching the parentheses, stays with this number here. This is not some random negative sign or minus sign floating in between two positive 8s. It is a negative 8. We are used to seeing this when we first learned the distributive property. We're used to seeing something like this. Okay, and it was easy to see, oh yeah, that's negative 8. But when we stick an 8 in front of it, a lot of us think, oh, well, let's just do this part and then move down our negative sign. And that's not what we do. We need to make sure we keep the sign with the number we're multiplying with. Okay, so let's distribute. All right, negative 8 times everything in parentheses, starting from the left. Negative 8 times x. I'm just going to write this for you here so you know what I'm doing. You can go ahead and multiply that, but I'm just kind of representing it with a new term here. And negative 8 times positive 1. Those are the two multiplication problems I have here. Okay, so let's take a look at those. I know that negative 8 times x is negative 8x, and negative 8 times 1 is negative 8. All right, so I have used all of this here. I've used all of this, and I have this random positive 8 floating up here, and I'm going to stick him in the front of our expression here. Now, my new expression is 8 minus 8x minus 8. Let's see what we can do with this guy. Okay, I have 3 terms here. Let's see if there are any like terms we can combine. Since I don't have an equal sign, I don't know the value of x, the only thing I have left to do is combine like terms to make it simpler. I know that like terms have the same variable. I have positive 8. I have negative 8x and negative 8. Well, the 8 and the negative 8 are like terms because they're just both integers, both constants with no variables. So I can put those together. 8 and negative 8, or 8 minus 8, is 0. I'm just going to write 0 here. And I even like to mark out the terms after I've used them. And I have negative 8x left, so I'm going to bring it down. 0 minus 8x. Now, I know that looks funny, and I typically wouldn't write the 0. I would just leave it out because 0 doesn't represent anything. But I wanted to show you what I was doing since it's our first time. So I have 0 minus 8x. Now, that is technically correct, but we can take 8x from 0, or we can just mark out our 0 here, and we're left with negative 8x. All right. Negative 4 times 2x minus 7, and then close parentheses, minus 7. All right. This one looks a little bit different because our distributive property is actually in the front, to the left of our expression here. And this usually actually makes it a little bit easier for me because I don't get confused about this sign here that's beside my number I'm multiplying with. Okay, so I've found my distributive property here. I know that I cannot combine 2x and negative 7, so let's go ahead and start distributing. There is one piece of this one that's going to be a very common mistake, and I'll point it out when I get to it. Okay, first step, negative 4 times positive 2x. I'm going to write this out so you can see what I'm doing here. Negative 4 times 2x. And then the next step, this is another common mistake. Remember how earlier I said that it's common that people forget that this negative goes with a 4? Well, the same thing happens with the inside of the parentheses. A lot of times, we will just look at this as a 7, but we cannot forget that this 7 is not a positive 7, it is a negative 7. So this is actually negative 4 times negative 7. All right, so I just wrote those out so you could see what I was actually multiplying. This negative goes with the 7. Okay, and then of course I have the negative 7 left over here, and I'll take care of that in a second. Okay, so I know that negative 4 times 2x, negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Tack my x on there. I'm done with that. You can mark it out if you'd like. Negative 4 times negative 7. I know using my sleeping man here that if I cover up the if I multiply two negatives, I cover up the two negatives, I'm left with a positive. So my answer is positive 28 if I did my math right. Done with that. And of course we've got this little lonely negative 7 floating here, so I'm going to bring him straight down. Don't forget to bring his sign with him. Minus 7, negative 7. All right. If you were to put this in a different order, that's fine. You could have put your negative 7 at the beginning as long as you kept your sign with it, but I like to keep it where it is lined up in the problem. So now I've got negative 8x plus 28 minus 7. All right, there's no more distributive property. I don't know what x equals. There's no equal sign, so the last thing I can do is see if I have any like terms, and of course I do. Negative 8x, positive 21, and negative 7. The two like terms here again are the terms that don't have any variables. Positive 28 and negative 7, they are different signs, so I'm going to subtract. 28 minus 7 is 21. Keep this on my bigger number, which is 28, and it's positive. Those are both finished. Then I've got negative 8x. I'm just going to bring that guy down here, negative 8x. So I've got negative 8x and positive 21, but I want to put these together and make it an expression, a unified expression, not just two random terms floating there. We know this 21 is positive, so I'm just going to put a plus sign in between those, and I've brought that down. Our simplified expression is negative 8x plus 21. All right, let's take a look at another term here. 8 plus 4 parentheses 1 minus 6x. All right, so again, let's find our distributive property. And that is 4 times 1 minus 6x. And in this case, you see, this 4 is going to be positive. It's going to be positive, so it makes it a little bit easier for us. All right, let's go ahead and start distributing. This time, I'm not going to write out what I'm multiplying like that. I'm just going to go ahead and multiply these guys and see what I get. All right, 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times, what is this term? Yes, it's a negative 6x. 4 times 6, I know, is 24. I'm going to bring down my x. I know that a positive times a negative is a negative. 4 times negative 6x is negative 24x. So I've used all of this here. I have this lonely 8 right here, so I'm going to bring him down. Of course, this 4 right here is a positive 4. I need to make this one expression, so I'm going to put my plus sign in front. Make it a little bit easier to read here. 8 plus 4 minus 24x. And again, I don't know the value of x. I don't have an equal sign, so I need to see if I have like terms. Positive 8, positive 4x, positive 4, negative 24x. The two terms that don't have variables are like terms. They're both positive. 8 plus 4 is 12. I'm all finished with those guys. And then I have negative 24x left over. Do not forget to keep your minus sign with your 24x. All right, if you had put the negative 24x in front, it would look like this. You would just need to make sure that you do not mix up your signs. All right, that can be a little bit confusing. That's why I just like to bring everything straight down. But these are the same expression. Either one would be acceptable. Okay, let's look at one more here and throw in a couple of tricky parts to it. So I've got negative m plus 9 times negative 2m minus 5. All right, let's follow our steps again. Let's identify the distributive property. I know that I can't combine what's inside parentheses, but I can distribute. All right, so I've got positive 9 times negative 2m minus 5. All right, let's go ahead and start distributing here. 9 times negative 2m. Positive times the negative is negative 18m. And then 9 times, don't forget, this is a negative 5. All right. If we have double signs here, like this, or plus a negative, We still want to get rid of those, but in this case I didn't include any double signs because that's another lesson we've already had. We're used to those. So 9 times negative 5 is negative 45. I'm finished with all of this. I have simplified it, and I do have this negative m hanging out here. I'm going to bring him straight down. All right, and he's done this row. Negative m minus 18m minus 45. Okay, let's go ahead and combine like terms if there are any. My three terms are negative m, negative 18m, and negative 45. All right. We know that when a variable is by itself with no coefficient, no number in front of it, all right, there's an understood 1 here. Now, it's not usually written with the variable. That's just not typically how we do it. It's not wrong. It's just not what we usually do. However, when I am actually multiplying or adding or subtracting with that term, I like to put a 1 there so it's easier for me to see what I'm doing. In this case, this negative m is a like term with another term in the expression. Negative 1m, and negative 18m are like terms because they both have an m. They are the same sign. I know same signs add. 18 plus 1 is 19. I'm going to keep my m with it, and I'm going to keep the sign of my bigger number. Don't forget all your integer rules here. I know there's a lot going on. My bigger number is 18, and it is negative. So I've got negative 19m when I combine these like terms. Those are finished. And I've got this negative 45 hanging out here. I'm going to bring him down. My simplified expression is negative 19m minus 45. So I do want to take a look at this word problem here because to make everything make a little bit more sense and to see an example of when we might actually use the distributive property here. Make it a little bit more practical. A rectangle has a length of x plus 5 and a width of 2x minus 9. Write an expression to represent the perimeter of the rectangle. All right, we know a rectangle, something like this. That's not a very pretty one, but it will work. All right, has a width of 2x plus 9, excuse me, 2x minus 9, and a width of x plus 5. All right, we basically want to write an expression here. Well, I actually know that the perimeter, there's a formula here. It equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So instead of just adding 2x plus 9 and then another 2x plus 9 and then an x plus 5 and x plus 5, I can actually use the distributive property to do this. All right. So I know that 2 times the length, well, that will be 2 times the length, which is x plus 5. And I also know that I'm going to add to that 2 times the width. And the width is 2x minus 9. Let's see what we can do here. All right. 2 times x, 2x. 2 times positive 5, positive 10. All right. I've got another distributive property here. 2 times 2x, positive 4x. And 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. I'm still left with 4 terms here. Let's see if any of these terms are like terms. And I believe they are. All right, let's see. My terms are 2x, positive 10, positive 4x, and negative 18. I know that the terms with the x are definitely like terms. 2x and 4x are 6x because they are the same sign. We're going to add them. Keep the sign of my bigger number. Those guys are combined and simplified. I've got 2 more terms here, positive 10 and negative 18. You could either bring those down right here, plus 10 minus 18, and then combine again, or go ahead and do all that all in the same step. Let's go ahead and bring them down. All right, negative 18 and positive 10 are like terms. They are different signs. So I'm going to subtract 18 minus 10 is 8. Keep the sign of my bigger number, which is 8. And 18, and it's negative, and then I'm going to bring down my 6x. So all together, the perimeter of the rectangle is 6x minus 8. 6x minus 8. And that is how we combine like terms using the distributive property.